and welcome to Cupcake Addiction's Rainbow Rose Frosted Cupcake tutorial, where I'm going to be showing you how to make this stunning rainbow rose cupcake. You might have seen on my channel a little while ago, we did some vintage buttercream roses. So we did those sort of in pastel colours, and this is essentially the same technique, but I'm going to show you how to do it in a really kind of a cool marbly rainbow effect. So let's get started. Tools and equipment that we will be using today. I've got 2 piping bags. The more you have, the easier this will be, but I've got 2 of the rose tip piping nozzles. So I'm using a Wilton 406, but anything that's got this sort of a slit piping nozzle is perfect. You'll see it's a little bit fatter at one end and a little bit thinner at one end. You want to keep that in mind for when you're piping, because we're always going to make sure that the fatter side is down at the cupcake and the thinner side is up at the top of our rose leaf. I've got my frosting. So you're not going to need a heap of each colour because we're only using a really little bit of each colour in each cupcake. I've got red, orange, yellow, green, blue, pink, and I sometimes get in trouble for forgetting purple, so I have made sure to have purple today. I've got my cupcake ready to ice. I've just baked that in a plain white cupcake wrapper today because I think it's going to really allow the colours to just pop on top of this cupcake. And I've got a little stack of spoons. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to take our cupcake, and I'm going to show you how to prepare these piping bags. So taking your piping bag, what you want to do now, as I've mentioned, you're going to have the top, the skinnier part of that piping nozzle towards the top, coming out to the top of the leaf, or the petal I should say, and you're going to have the fatter part down at the cupcake. So you want to have a think about the colours that you're starting with. I'm going to start with a combination of pink and purple, but I want to make sure that I've got less frosting in the top colour than I have in the bottom colour. So for me, purple's going to be the top colour. I'm going to put more pink in there, and that's going to allow that pink to peek out and just a little bit of a ribbon of the purple on top, which gives us that kind of two-tone effect. So taking your spoon, you want to just open up the piping bag and keeping an eye on where your top and your bottom of your tip is. I'm going to get mainly pink, so more of my pink, and just a spoonful or so, depending on how many you're going to do. If you're going to do a dozen of these, I suggest you do all of the centres at once, then all of the next colour at once, then all of the third colour, and so on, just to make it a little bit easier. So take your frosting, and we're just going to put it, you can see there I'm really just putting it on the bottom half of that bag, and don't try to push it all the way down just yet. We will do that shortly once we've got both colours in there. So now I'm just going to take a little bit less of that purple, and I'm going to slide it in. You can see the back of my spoon is touching the pink there, and then I'm going to use my finger just to wipe that purple off with the piping bag. So what you've got there, you can kind of shake them down a little bit. What you've got there is quite a bit more pink than what you've got purple. The purple is closer to this smaller tip, or the top of the tip, and the pink is closer to the fatter part of the tip. So just using your hands now, just push them down, and you see I'm sort of pushing them down together. Now, the first thing that we're going to do just to prepare our cupcake, so it doesn't really matter what colour's coming out here, is we're going to, I always like to hold mine in my hand like this. So you can see there I've sort of got thin side up, fat side down, and I'm holding it, I guess, with the fat side towards the palm of my hand and the thin side towards my little finger. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give it just a bit of a ruffle around, and you'll see it's really just pink at the moment. So with the other colours, I do always get you to start them until you see both colours coming through. But because we're just giving our cupcake just a really nice coat, it doesn't really matter. Okay, now we want to just build up our centre a little bit. So to build up your centre, you're just going to sort of do a little bit of a curl. So see there? Up it goes. And that just gives us a little bit of a, I guess, a little bit of a mound to work with. And what we're going to do here is just tuck it around. So if you want to see this technique done again, like I said, we've got that vintage rose cupcake tutorial, but I'm going to show you in this one. So you've sort of got 2 tutorials you can refer back to if you're trying to master this art. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that piping tip and I'm going to curl it around. So essentially you're making like a little cone curled inwards just around that little mound, and that's going to make the centre of our lovely little rose. Now, to start with the petals, the trick here is in flicking your wrist out. So as you attach the petal at the actual cupcake, you want to flick your wrist out and sort of curl it around. So have a look at that. You've got your pink centre, you've got your purple coming out. Now attach again at the base, nice and close here, attach, and as you squeeze, you're also turning the cupcake and flicking your wrist. And you want to just overlap that next petal over the last petal. So quite small for your inside petals, and you should do about 5 in there. Now with your last petal on any layer, you want to make sure that you meet the 2 of them up. So squeezing and push it over there. Beautiful. Now if any of them haven't flicked how you want them to flick, you can just use your finger and just very, very gently flick them out. And that'll just give you a little bit more of an open rose, otherwise you can have a bit of a more closed rose, but that's the beginnings. We want to take our next 2 colours. For me, they're going to be blue and green. And once again, we're going to take more of the green and a little bit less of the blue. So I want a fair bit of the green, and I'm going to put it down towards the fat side of my piping tip. And then just a little bit less of that blue. Blue is quite a dominant colour too, as is purple, so try to have a little bit less of the darker colours so that your lighter colours can peek through without getting overwhelmed. So just give it a little squeeze out in your bowl until you see some of that blue starting to come through. Perfect. Once again, I'm holding it with my fat side down to my palm and the thin side up to my finger, and now I'm just going to start crossing over again. So wherever there's a join in the petals, we're going to make a new petal. And again. So each time I do this, I'm attaching the frosting to the actual cupcake, to that little pink, I guess, ruffled skirt that we put on there. And flicking it up as I turn the cupcake and then reattaching it down. Beautiful. So that's your next layer. Now we're just going to go and wash those bags, come back, and we'll be ready to keep going. All right, so I've washed out my bags. Now we're going to come back and we're going to do a combination of green and yellow here. So green is going to be my more dominant colour and yellow is going to be my less dominant. You will start to use just a little bit more frosting as you come around the outside petals, just because you're making more petals and they're a little bit larger than you did with the inside. But we're just going to squeeze it out just to start it off again until we see that little bit of green coming through. So we're just going to repeat this with our next layer of petals. So with this, you can just pipe your different coloured petals without doing the 2 coloured frosting and all that sort of stuff in each piping bag. But the 2 coloured frosting just looks just a little bit more like a blended rainbow. My next colour combination is going to be yellow and orange. And I want yellow to be at the top and orange to be at the bottom. And it's a really good idea when you're putting your piping tips in, try to have them sort of facing where you've got the seams in the piping bag. Try to have them facing that same way, because then you know that you're just lining up one colour with that seam and one colour with that seam. So then orange will be our other colour in this bag, and pushing them down. Now if you love this tutorial, make sure that you head on over to our channel, My Cupcake Addiction. We've got a whole lot of great cupcake and cake pop tutorials, and we have a whole playlist dedicated just to rainbow food. I love it that much. So if you love all things rainbow, cake and cake pop, as well as cupcakes of course, make sure you head on over and check us out. Now with this yellow and orange layer, you can see I'm actually doing slightly smaller petals, and that's just going to be to kind of hold everything in, hold everything together, because if you just keep getting bigger and bigger as you go out, it actually becomes almost impossible to make the petals and they start to droop. So I'm just taking down the size of them a little bit. Once again, flicking with the wrist and joining up that last one. So if you want, you can give it just a couple of little taps on the bench, and that just lets them fan out a little bit more. All right, now coming back for our last 2 colours. So the second last colour is going to be a combination still of the orange and the red. So you want to take your bag, and we're just going to do the top colour is going to be orange. Just turn that over because I'm right-handed, it makes it a little bit easier. And we're going to spoon in a little bit of that orange and then a bit more of that red. Push those ones down. And we're going to come around once again in about a similar sized petal. So I'm starting to get towards the outside of my cupcake there, and I'm just making sure that I'm still attaching at the frosting, tucking in, and always, always overlapping the join of the petals before. Just helps to hold them all together, and that's how a rose naturally forms. So that's how you want to keep it going. My suggestion for perfecting this technique is to take 1 cupcake and 1 colour frosting and just have a practice with the actual technique before you go getting all of the colours. With the technique, pipe it, wipe it. pipe it, wipe it. So call it almost like a sacrificial cupcake, but just pipe and pipe and pipe until you're happy, because you will come to a point where that technique is just second nature to you and you're not even going to think about it. For my last colour here, I'm going to use mainly red, so I want red to be my dominant colour up the top with just a little bit of orange down the bottom, as you might have guessed. Beautiful. And this is going to finish off. So for your outer layer, you want to make sure that you're really coming in quite a bit smaller on those last lot of petals. So what you're going to do is you're just going to come in nice and tight and nice and small. And this is just going to sort of close everything up, hold it all together nicely, and just give you your last little petals around the edge and that lovely pop of red that finishes off our rainbow beautifully. Now the buttercream frosting recipe that I've used today, I've used our My Cupcake Addiction buttercream frosting, but when I know that I'm going to be doing something like this, which is going to require, I guess, a little bit more firmness, I always eliminate the milk component completely from that buttercream frosting, and then I just add it in just a tiny bit at a time, so I end up with a really, really firm frosting. I never add all of the milk, because that's going to give you a softer frosting, which is great for your bigger swirls and for your traditional cupcake swirls. But whenever you're doing piping like this, flowers, piping roses, you really want to have a nice firm buttercream frosting. So now I'm looking at that, and I'm just going to turn it around while looking sort of at the top of it and just see if there's anywhere that I think I might need a couple more petals. So that completes your gorgeous rainbow rose. I hope that you guys love these rainbow rose cupcakes. Another addition to the Cupcake Addiction rainbow food playlist. As I said, we've got so many great rainbow ideas on our channel, as well as ideas for everything cake, cupcake and cake pop. But I hope that this one will become one of your favorites. Thanks very much for tuning in to My Cupcake Addiction.